All other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles, path to liberation. All knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. All other sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect precious Bodhi. All mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Bodhi. Thus, until I achieve Buddha, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I engage in virtuous deeds, body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I engage in virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Most excellent, I take refuge until Bodhi is reached. By the merit of generosity and other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all wandering beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. If you have the picture, 112. If you have the PDF, of the 4th session Guru Yoga. It's page 12. I respectfully pay homage with fierce and longing faith of the three types to you, the glorious Guru, Lord of the four Kayas, with my body, speech, and mind. I make offerings of all these established things, outer, inner, and other, the one who offers that which is offered, and the act of offering. I indivisible in essence, this being so, I make this offering of the great single taste free from elaborations. Grant me the accomplishment of effortlessness. I lay bare the impairments and breakings of the vows of the three vehicles and rejoice in your liberating deeds. Please turn the wheel of Dharma in accordance with the capacities of those to be trained and remain here for as long as samsara has not been emptied. I dedicate the merit accumulated in the three times to the welfare of wandering beings. I supplicate you, the Dharmakaya, great Vajradhara of the sixth family. I supplicate you, the 85 Indian Mahasiddhas. I supplicate you, Tili Prajna Bhadra. I supplicate you, Naronyana Siddhi. I supplicate you, Marpa of Lodra, the translator. I supplicate you, Mila Shepa Dorje. I supplicate you, Dao Shonu of Dangpo. I supplicate you, the three Siddhas of Kam. I supplicate you, Dorje Gyalpo of Phagmo. I supplicate you, Jikten Dorje Beldra. I supplicate you, Supreme Refuge, Jikten Sumgön. I supplicate you, Dharma Lord Anashiri. I supplicate you, Kenjen Sutrim Dorje. I supplicate you, Onchen Sonam Dragpa. I supplicate you, Chenga Dragpa Jungne. I supplicate you, Chung O Dorje Dragpa. I supplicate you, Toka Rinchen Senge. I supplicate you, Tsamche Dragpa Sonam. I supplicate you, Chuni Dorje Rinchen. I supplicate you, Tuku Dorje Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Nyani Chuki Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Shenyan Tundrum Gyalpo. I supplicate you, Rinchen Pelgi Gyalzen. I supplicate you, Chogyal Rinchen Pelzang. I supplicate you, Rixin Choki Gyalso. I supplicate you, Gyalwang Kunga Rinchen. I supplicate you, Jisen Rinchen Punso. I supplicate you, Rinchen Nampara Gyalwa. I supplicate you, Penchen Pelgi Gyalsen. I supplicate you, Chokle Nampar Gyalwa. I supplicate you, Tsungme Chogyal Punso. I supplicate you, Drikchen Tashi Punso. I supplicate you, Jesun Kunjo Rinchen. I supplicate you, Rixin Choki Dragpam. I supplicate you, Control Trinle Namjiao. I supplicate you, Control Trinle Sangpo. I supplicate you, Trinle Dundrum Jojiao. I supplicate you, Control Tenzin Drodu. I supplicate you, Tenzin Jugi Niman. I supplicate you, Gyabda Peme Gyalzen. I supplicate you, Jamyan Choki Gyalzen. I supplicate you, Zhuwang Chugi Gyalzen. I supplicate you, Rinchen Tempe again. I supplicate you, Gyalwang Tuje Nima. I supplicate you, Rixin Nuden Dorje. I supplicate you, Jason Choki Lodrom. I supplicate you, Gyalcho Shive Lodro. I supplicate you, Jason Dharmakara. I supplicate you, Tisabdenzin Tubden. I supplicate you, the dark will guide you, protector of wandering beings. I supplicate you, my kind rude Guru. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the rarity of their freedoms and endowments. I still squander away my life. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on impermanence and death, I still fixate on composite phenomena as permanent. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the unmistaken nature of cause and effect, I still pervert what to adopt and what to abandon. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on the sufferings of cyclic existence, I still take the way to the lower realms. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I safeguard the vows of individual liberation, I still lack renunciation and the determination to be free. Look upon me from afar. Compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on all wandering beings as my parents, I still have bias attachment to friends and aversion for enemies. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate loving kindness and compassion, I still hold on to envy and enmity. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I cultivate aspiration and action bodhicitta, I still focus only on my own welfare. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my body as the deity's exalted form, I still cling to ordinary perception. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion, reckless and mundane, although I have counted the mantras to be recited. I still waste away my life force. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I cultivate the samadhi of water and moon in the water, I still solidify things as real and substantial. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I conclude by dissolving in the subsequent stage, I still purify and confess superficially. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on my own mind as free from elaborations, I still have conceptual attitudes. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I cultivate not grasping at whatever arises, I still affix an artificial watchfulness. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I cultivate resting freely in the natural state, I still amplify artificialities. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, although I meditate on unity beyond conceptions, I still get carried away by the masses of likes and dislikes. Look upon me from afar with eyes of compassion. Reckless and mundane, I supplicate you, who are my refuge and protector in this and all other lives. Physician who removes the chronic diseases of samsara, hero who vanquishes the enemies that are afflictive emotions, sun which dispels the darkness of ignorance, moon that protects from the heat of suffering, Jewel which fulfills all our needs and desires, you Guru, who are all-inclusive and all-sufficient, I supplicate you from the depths of my heart with compassion, swiftly heed me. Effortlessly bestow your blessings, grant me now and on this seed the naturally accomplished feast of the two benefits. I am endowed with both merit and devotion. Do not leave my hopes unfulfilled. Don't cast away my devotion in vain. Don't let my supplications vanish unanswered. Don't be indifferent with your compassion, refuge and protector in this life, in the intermediate state and beyond. Whatever occurs, joy or sorrow, good or bad, only you are my hope. Look upon me with eyes of compassion. You alone are my hope. Now we go to Jikten Sumgön's dedication prayer. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage Gurus, assembly of Idam deities, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Viras, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all our mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstruct us, who harm, those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their mara retinues, have happiness, be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment. With my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta, may I become a virtuous spiritual friend. With good qualities, limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Page 49 of the Great Drikung Teachings to the Assembly. We have just started the third teaching, and this teaching will be on the topic of dependent arising, also translated as interdependent origination, dependent origination, and so on and so forth. So the basic teaching on this is that all, according to the Buddha, all phenomena, all appearances, all things, all conditions, all states arise through an interdependent, a network of interdependent causes and conditions. And so, in other words, the Buddha said that nothing kind of happens, exists, appear due to only a single cause. In the Buddha's own time, there were some people, not necessarily most people, but some people believe in a single cause, which is the equivalent of what we may call the idea of a creator God, a God who brought into existence all of this, whereas God himself, itself, has always been in existence, and then this causeless cause gave rise, became the cause for everything. So there's that notion. Buddha says, no, this is not how it is. Instead, everything arises through the coming together of a network, a complex combination of causes and conditions. Then from that basic principle, basic idea, this teaching is elaborated on and applied to different contexts. So one context is to look at how this process of dependent arising gave rise to what we call samsara, what we call confused existence. And so the most famous way that the Buddha taught this is he taught this using this teaching called the 12 links, like link, one linking to the other, the 12 links of dependent origination. So in these 12 links, one leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. So there, rather than emphasizing like at any point in these links, there are many conditions at work. Here it emphasizes more just one thing to pay attention to, which is due to ignorance or not seeing, then grasping arises. Grasping arises, then this arises. And when this arises, then it gives rise to this. And when this arises, it gives rise to this. And so on and so forth, all the way to birth, old age, sickness, death. And then with death, again, this next cycle begins. Begins out of ignorance again. So that's another, that's maybe the most well-known kind of, when people say Pratītyasamutpāda, and they think of these 12 links of dependent origination. So here in this chapter, Kyoba Rinpoche, when he says dependent origination, mostly he's using it in the more, the broader sense of dependent origination. Depending on this, this arises. Depending on that, that arises. Then that is dependent on this, and this is dependent on that, and that is dependent on that. So this interdependent arising, this basic teaching of the Buddha. So yesterday we began this third teaching, and we saw how Kagyupa Rinpoche applies this terminology, dependent origination, not only to the dependent origination that we are most familiar with, which is how confused existence dependently arise. Not only that, Kagyupa Rinpoche says, there's also the dependent origination that is free from the 8 extremes of elaboration. The dependent origination that is free from the 8 extremes of elaboration. Now, as I said yesterday, I said, based on, what I know, this is not often seen in other places. Because free from the extremes of the 8 extremes of elaboration, that is often called emptiness. But here, Kagyupa Rinpoche deliberately calls it the dependent origination that is free from the 8 extremes of elaboration. In a way, you could say, well, he's not saying, he's not. What he's basically saying is emptiness. But here he wants to emphasize, even in the context of emptiness, right, you can understand dependent origination. That it is a type of dependent origination. Yeah. Now, which then, of course, led to yesterday Judy's question about, wait, so emptiness has dependent origination? No, so not quite. Emptiness is also reliant on causes and condition? Not quite. So we have to see, right, the rest of this chapter, the rest of this teaching, where he goes with this, and if he goes, he elaborates more on dependent origination that is free from the 8 extremes of elaboration. More importantly at this point is to recognize that what Kagyupa Rinpoche wants to make sure is we don't separate these two things, so that we think, oh, the ultimate attainment is to attain emptiness, and emptiness is over here. The relative is about dependent origination, about karmic causality, and it's over here. And this is relative over here. And as long as we are stuck in relative, we will never be able to get over here to the ultimate. Kagyupa Rinpoche wants to make sure we don't think like this, because the relationship between the ultimate and the relative is not ultimate over there, emptiness over there, relative over here, dependent origination over here. But rather, they are two sides of the same reality. Rather, they are two sides of the same reality. Then there is this again very provocative, interesting expression: space-like cause and effect. And there, the emphasis is that same emphasis. So it's not like space-like over here, cause and effect over here. As long as cause and effect is happening, space-like is not something that we can realize. Or if we realize space-like, it cancels out cause and effect over here. But rather understand that cause and effect, the very fact that cause and effect can even occur, can even take place, is because the nature of all things is space-like. If the nature of all things were not space-like, cause and effect cannot take place. And if cause and effect cannot take place, then none of this is possible, and none of this would exist. So now let's look, continue. Dependent origination exists free from the 8 extremes, and therefore, when something depends upon conditions, that is dependent origination of cause and result. Yeah, he wants to continue in this direction. To bring what on the surface sounds like contradictory, a contradictory position, but to bring this again to our attention. So let's look at this carefully. Dependent origination exists free from the 8 extremes. So here, I think you can substitute, because essentially he's talking about that, that which is more commonly referred to as the emptiness nature. So the emptiness nature is free from the 8 extremes. And the emptiness nature is the emptiness nature of everything, of all things. When something depends upon conditions, that is what we call dependent origination of cause and result. Yeah, so he's contrasting these two. So that's why, even though we say they are two sides of the same coin, we are not saying that they are one and single thing either. We also need to see that when we talk about emptiness, they're emptiness free from the 8 extremes. The extremes, the 8 extremes, what are they? Like eternal or nihilist. Coming, going, born, die. These are like part of those 8 extremes. So dependent origination exists free from the 8 extremes. So this is the emptiness. So there are two aspects. You cannot say there's only one aspect. So perhaps we could rephrase this by saying, it's one reality, but this one reality has two aspects. The aspect of emptiness, and when something depends on conditions, when something is dependent on conditions to exist, that is dependent origination of cause and result. Also, by their fundamental nature, cause and result are free from the 8 extremes. Cause and effect, cause and result. All these causes and results, by their fundamental nature, they are empty, which is free from the 8 extremes. It's a longer way of saying they're empty of inherent existence. But they do play out, they do manifest. On the point that dependent origination is free from the 8 extremes, Arya Nagarjuna, in his fundamental verses on the middle way, teaches dependent origination is not ceasing, not arising, not extinct, not permanent, not one, not many, not coming, not going. So these are the 8 extremes, what's called the 8 extremes. Complete pacification of elaboration, quiescent. Here translated as peace. Peace, don't think of it as, the topic of pop songs, Peace, during wartime. People standing around singing about peace. This quiescent is talking about where all affective emotions and all suffering has been completely pacified. Gone, quiet. quiescent. Complete pacification of elaboration, quiescent. I bow to him who taught that, the perfect Buddha, the best of teachers. This is at the opening of the Nagarjuna's fundamental verses on the middle way. And the Bunya Mula Madhyama Kakarika. He begins with this verse of homage. Right? In this verse of paying homage, he also lays out kind of the content of his famous composition, this fundamental verses, which is dependent origination, which is emptiness. So here, dependent origination then is the appearing aspect of things. And then the not ceasing, not arising, not extinct, not permanent, not one, not many, not coming, not going. That is the emptiness aspect of things. And the appearing aspect of thing is dependent origination. The emptiness aspect of things is freedom from the 8 elaborations. But again, coming back to this context, Kyuba Rinpoche provocatively uses the expression dependent origination free from the 8 extremes. Again, it's his way of reminding us, what do we mean when we say emptiness? We mean dependent origination free from the 8 elaborations. And that emptiness is not opposed to cause and effect. In fact, furthermore, cause and effect is only possible because things are empty of inherent existence, intrinsic nature. Continuing, thus it is taught that freedom from the 8 extremes, when relying on conditions, also manifests as dependent origination of cause and result. See? Thus it is taught that emptiness, when relying on conditions, not that emptiness is reliant on conditions, okay? But emptiness, when conditions come together, it manifests, it appears as dependent origination of cause and result. So this relying on conditions is not talking about emptiness is reliant on conditions. But whatever is appearing, due to, maybe better translate this way, due to conditions. When conditions comes in, once causes and conditions appear, then it's what we call the dependent origination of cause and result. Now, given this, or here it says, if this is so, given this, what are the conditions for samsara, the ocean of suffering? And what kinds of things are the conditions for nirvana, the 3 kinds of awakening? So here is where it is more important. If you say, oh, I'm really confused now, what is this emptiness, what is this dependent origination? Okay, never mind, actually, in fact. These things are taught to the assembly. Some in the assembly have greater capacity than others. And also when we say greater capacity, right, don't think that, oh, it's so unfair, I don't have that capacity. In our system, we say, great capacity. How do you get the great capacity? You develop to the point of great capacity, So it's about what you are capable of absorbing for now. That which you cannot absorb, you say, may I be able to absorb in the future. That which you have absorbed now, you're like, oh, I'm so happy, I rejoice. And may this not be lost. Yeah? So here, but more important than that, here is what we can know, need to know. What are the conditions for samsara, the ocean of suffering? What are the conditions for nirvana? Any of the three kinds of awakening. See, in this set of teachings especially, Kagyupa Rinpoche often talks about the three kinds of awakening, meaning the three types of bodhi. And this is a very old grouping, or this is a very old category, rubric of the three types of bodhi. And here, the three types of bodhi, or the three types of awakening, is talking about the awakening that hearers attain, the awakening that solitary realizers attain, and the awakening that Buddhas, full and complete Buddhas, attain. These are the three types of bodhi. Okay? The bodhi attained by hearers. Hearer Buddhas, actually, to be exact. Hearers is hearer Buddhas. Those who heard the Buddhas and became awake. Then there's the solitary realizer Buddhas, Pratyeka Buddhas. And then there's the complete and perfect Buddhas, like Buddha Shakyamuni, Samyaksambuddha. These are the three types of bodhi. So he says, what are the conditions then? When we're talking about conditions, what are the conditions that lead to the ocean of suffering? And what are the conditions that lead to the three kinds of awakening? And also, how do all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana arise through dependent origination and conditions? In some ways, this is more important to understand. Even if you cannot completely, or you feel not satisfied with your understanding of where we started with. Never mind. What's more important are the questions that he's raising now. To begin with, do not perceive phenomena as having external existence. Do not perceive phenomena. Do not see phenomena, regard phenomena as having external existence. Whether it is the divine abode of the 33, with Indra's palace called triumphant in all directions, or the abode of hell beings with the ground of red-hot iron and so forth, none of it exists externally. They are appearances that accord with the states of your mind. Okay. This is like, really like you could say, what's known as introducing us to our minds, to the nature of our minds. This is also called pointing out instruction. This is Kagyupa Rinpoche leading us to an understanding of mind, nature of mind, nature of experiences. So what he's saying here is what we experience, what we perceive. So perceive need not just be the eyes, perceive. But what we experience, none of what we experience is actually things out there. He says we should take that position. So for me, so this is my particular read, and it's not the only way to read this, but I have to say, I'm not going to say, oh, this is the only meaning. My particular read of this is, we don't need, right now at least, we don't need to think that he's saying there are no tables and chairs, in your living room. That those are figments of your imagination. He's not talking about that. Or you don't need to understand this in this way. Because What's the purpose of understanding it in this way? That he's saying the tables and the chairs, the kitchen, the house plants, that you see around here, these are just your figments of your imagination. There's no apparent benefit in that kind of understanding, right? Because not only if you start thinking they are the figments of your imagination, then you can't sit on them, you can't cook in them, you can use them. So what is he saying here? At the very least, what he's saying here. So we can begin with at the very least, meaning it's okay for us to say, let me take a very not so profound understanding of this statement. So I feel, even if you think the not so profound understanding of what is stated here, when he says, whether it is the divine abode of the 33, with Indra's palace of triumphant in all directions, or the abode of the hell beings with the ground of red-hot iron and so forth, none of it exists externally. Meaning, your experiences are in the end your own experiences. Can you recognize that and take that position? So what are the implications of that when you say that? When you can understand it in that way, and when you can take that position, what are the implications? The implications then is happiness and suffering. The determination of happiness and suffering is an inside job, which is what I have repeated many times. Insight meaning your mind. Good news and bad news, your mind gets to decide. Is this happiness the triumphant in all directions palace of Indra in the heaven of 33? Where it's described as, whatever Indra, king of the gods, want, he just have to lightly think about it, and ta-da, it appears in front of him. Effortless. Whatever his heart's desire will just turn up and will satisfy him. And the red lava that is flowing in the hell realms, that also is up to your mind. It's up to your heart. And so he says, and when he say it's up to, right? It's also not like pop psychology, or this thing called like manifesting. You have to manifest wealth in your life. You have to manifest, health in your life. Where you just think, oh, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich, I am healthy, right? And then meanwhile, you put all kinds of junk into your body. You're not going to be healthy, I can guarantee you. Because it says, they, whether it's the divine abode or the abode of the hell beings, they are appearances that accord with the states of mind. They are appearances that you have habituated, that you have programmed your mind into experiencing. So when I say it's an inside job, it's also not the case that you can just wake up one day and say, I've decided, I've decided I like Brussels sprouts. Oh, not so easy, you know. You can begin by saying, from today onwards, I'm going to like Brussels sprouts, right? Then at least the first step is, right, you go buy Brussels sprouts, whether already cooked or learn how to cook. Then you're gonna eat, right? Oh, God, yuck, right? And then you're like, but I'm going to learn to like it. This is what it's saying. You can train yourself to become, an expert and like Brussels sprouts. But until, right, you have that understanding and the resolve that I am capable of liking Brussels sprouts, then it will never happen. So, they are appearances that accord with the state of your mind. So in the end, what you experience is what you experienced. Somebody else standing right next to you, looking at the same thing, experiencing the same thing, seemingly same thing, have a different experience. Why? Because we're not actually talking about the Brussels sprout that's out there. The Brussels sprouts that's actually out there is secondary to the Brussels sprouts that I'm experiencing, she is experiencing, he is experiencing. Even if we use the same fork, and pick up the same plate of Brussels sprouts that we have just cooked together. Stick in my mouth, they stick in their mouth, they stick in their mouth. We have 3 different experiences. And so none of it exists externally. None of my experience of this bite of Brussels sprouts, none of his experience or her experience, or the dog's experience exists outside of that experience, exists externally. Likewise, the 3 visual perceptions of Ganges River and so forth that arise are the appearances of the inner state of the mind arising there. These 3 appearances of Ganges River is referring to how to a hungry ghost, when they look at the Ganges River, they see a river or a body of blood and pus. And for humans, then they experience that as a river. For the gods, they see elixir, nectar flowing. And then if you want to add for hell beings, they see molten lava flowing. And all 3 types of beings, 4 types of beings experience the same, right? What's experience? You can say externally it's quote unquote one thing, but 4 different experiences arise. And where do these different experiences come from? It comes from the inner states of the mind that perceive them. And how is that possible? That I can experience this as a river and put a kayak in it and go, In my case, my kayak would just go around and around and around. not this enjoyable, right? And somebody else will have an enjoyable kayaking down this river. I will just be going in circles. So, right, even both people perceiving the river will already have two different experiences going on. Yeah, and then hell being, if brought there, will see molten lava and like, no way, I'm not getting into it, right? And then the fish and water creatures, they're just going about their lives, They don't even have a concept that there's something else outside of here. This is just, right? Then the gods will be like, oh, party, all this good stuff to enjoy. Then the hungry ghosts also in a way party, but then it's like they have no choice. They have to, they perceive it as blood and pus, as in it's repulsive, but at the same time, they don't have any other way to quench their hunger and thirst, so they reluctantly consume, it says. Why is that possible? And this takes us back to the concluding sentence of this section. It's possible because there is no intrinsic existence to that thing that I call a river, that the hell being calls a river of molten lava, that the gods called, a party of elixir, because it's empty of inherent existence, and so different causes and conditions can arise to give rise to different experiences, different realities emerging from it. And so he says, therefore, without understanding dependent origination free from the 8 extremes, meaning emptiness, and dependent origination of cause and result, there are no means to practice dharma. Meaning, there's no hope. Practice dharma means, hope for changing the situation. So without understanding, that cause and effect and emptiness are two sides. They need each other. Without understanding that point, then there is no way of changing whatever it is that you don't like here. Now, of course, the fundamental thing the Buddha identified as what we should work on changing is dukkha. Nobody wants dukkha, so let's stop creating dukkha. Let's change. Yes, super bien, yeah. Here, Kagyupa Rinpoche uses philosophical terms and language that has developed in the Buddhist tradition. But you'll see how he always turns it to, he doesn't allow this to go into these kind of, admittedly you could say, very like quote unquote clear expositions about dependent origination. Then there are 3 points, and then 6 points, and then this point, that point. You can, and there is material like this in the Buddhist tradition. But there's the danger of like learning this and then memorizing this and then mistakenly thinking, this is the purpose of these teachings, of these categories, of these arguments, and not knowing How does it work when suffering turns up? When dukkha, comes knocking on the door, how does any of these things work? And Kyoba Rinpoche always brings it back to that point. When dukkha turns up, what are you going to do about it? So to the degree that he would use these technical terms, quotations, even like using reasoning, logic, it's all in the service of helping us see how to apply these teachings when dukkha turns up. So this is, I would say, one of the flavors, distinctive flavors of the early Kagyupas. The early Kagyupa family of practitioners, from Gampopa's, especially from Gampopa's time, within 2-3 generations of Gampopa's time. Of course, there was a very, is by no means am I suggesting that in the early Kagyupa communities that all the people who turn up, were of single mind, of only practicing. In fact, there were some who had, interest in philosophy, interest in training and logic, and they would go train and then they would come back, and then some had interest in like mastering like tantric ritual and techniques, and they would go. And what I mean by the early Kagyupa's overall approach is what I mean. The overall approach is to not have so much emphasis on these other aspects of the Buddhist tradition, which in other traditions may have stronger emphasis. In the early Kagyupas, like Gampopa, Phagmo Drupa, Jikten Sumgön, they were much more focused on how to bring these teachings to the level of, when suffering turns up, how is this going to work? So rather than mastering complex theoretical systems, but there were some among this early community who did have that interest, and it appears that, the teachers didn't say, don't. The teachers just like, okay, sure, you go learn that, But when you come back here, I'm going to remind you. When you come back here, I'm going to remind you. Have you seen your mind? Do you know how it works? Do you know how suffering arises? And do you therefore know how to dissipate suffering when it arises? So I think we can also have this kind of community, so to say, where different people have, due to our own, again, our own causes and conditions, our own different karmas, we are allowed. In fact, it's good that we have different interests in different aspects of the Buddhist tradition. But then what the early Kagyupa masters have to offer, I think, is really this kind of heart-based, in the sense of like, heart-based in the sense that suffering arises in the heart or takes place there. And so we need to unentangle the messy knots that are here. And primarily, all the teachings of the Buddhists are for that purpose. And not forget that. Changchu Semchu Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Yu Je Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Bel Wan Shou This Saturday and Sunday is the Lion Face Dakini short retreat. Sunday morning is just one session, and we'll also do the talk. For that, at home, if you are joining us, you need to prepare a plate of offering, solids, chewables, so to say, and drinkable, representing the two accumulations of wisdom and skillful means. Also, during this retreat, we will be blessing these mantra bands of Singhamukha that Alma took the lead in fundraising for among her Dharma friends, many of you here. We have got this successfully made and sent here, 1,000 of these actually. So on this weekend, I'll talk about how you can get them. Well, obviously, if you come to the temple, then you can get them there. But those of you who are not here, I have to think of a way to get them to you. So these will become available. And of course, I'm also coming to Mexico soon. I can bring, I think 500 of them, maybe, at least, somehow. So, okay. Ta-ta, everyone.